Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex. If you think today's tip or guest interview can help someone you know, please share this with them. And if you enjoy listening to our show, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button on the episodes. Finally, aside from our podcast, our day job here at Riderflex is to provide recruiting, staffing, and consulting services. You can visit riderflex.com to learn more about us and get the information on the services we provide. And now, a quick word from our sponsor and friends at Marketing 360.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to get into Obsidian and all the HR stuff for sure, especially with remote work and COVID and all this stuff. It's a good time for you to be on the show.
Yeah, absolutely. No shortage of challenges out there that businesses are dealing with.
Right. Yeah. Before we get into that, though, how about you personally? Can we talk about your life, your family early on, maybe parents, siblings? Yeah, give me an overview. Go for it.
Absolutely. So I grew up in Tampa, Florida. I'm the youngest of three. I've got two older sisters, and had a good childhood. My parents have been married for, gosh, they have a 50th anniversary, I think, next year.
Wow.
They actually just visited and left Denver about a week ago. So it's nice to see them. But so cool. I grew up in Florida, in Tampa, then moved to Orlando for college, for university. Went to the University of Central Florida for a while. I actually ended up dropping out because I got caught up in a startup. It was the heady .com days, and kind of did the college dropout route to get into the business world. Today, I've been in Denver for almost 8.5 years. Spent a lot of time in Florida. Actually lived in Hawaii for 4.5 years. Came to Denver from Hawaii and have been here. I've got 3 young boys, Colton, Brooks, and Meyer, that are, keep me busy, and a wife of 17 years that also keeps me busy. So love to travel, and motorsports is my hobby.
Oh, okay. About how old are the sons, the boys? What are
11, 7, and 5. So kind of in the middle school to kindergarten range.
That's actually the best time, like right before puberty, right? Before they start thinking they know things and getting an attitude. Like you're in the sweet spot right there where they still give you hugs, they still say "I love you, Dad," and all this cool stuff.
That's right. Although my oldest does make me drop him off down the street for school now, so he's
okay,
walking on his own.
It's already starting.
That's right.
I always tell people we had 4 kids ourselves, and I always say, look, between like 3 and 11, like right in there, that is a magical time. Once they hit puberty, 12 years old to 18, there's some challenges. Right. Usually you're going to have three teenage boys almost at the same time. So that should be interesting. You'll have to let me know how that goes.
I will. It's going to be they're a handful today, but as they get older, I'm sure it's going to be a different type of handful.
Is one of them out of the 3, is it like one's super aggressive, one's introverted, or are they all the same? What's the pattern?
It's funny. I really started to notice it. My oldest is very studious and I'd say reads an enormous amount. He's a bookworm, and we'll be reading a book 24 hours a day. One of those things where you have to tell him to turn off his light at night, or he would stay up all night reading. My middle one is a sports fanatic. Like he is so into Broncos football. He can tell you every player, every stat. He cried when Von Miller got traded. And my youngest is super artistic. We'll sit there, at 5 and color in a coloring book for an hour or 2 at a time, and be thrilled about it. So yeah, it's interesting to see their personalities develop.
It is, isn't it? It really is fascinating to watch that. Yeah, very cool. What's your wife do? Or does she take care of the boys?
My wife's so she's a pediatric nurse practitioner at Children's Hospital here in Denver. She works in the pediatric neurology area, taking care of kids with epilepsy and intractable seizures.
Wow. How'd you guys meet?
We actually were introduced by my parents. We were high school sweethearts. She was my date to the senior prom.
Oh,
And
okay.
my mom and her dad worked together at the post office. And as I mentioned, I was into motorsports when I was a teenager. I wanted to learn how to work on cars, and that wasn't something my dad knew how to teach me, but her dad did. And so my mom introduced me to her dad, and he was showing me how to change the oil on my first car.
Cool.
And it turns out I was more interested in his daughter.
That's pretty neat. Are you, so you still into the motorsports? Is that still your hobby?
It is, yeah. I big Formula One fan. So my weekends for my Sunday mornings are typically watching Formula One with my boys, and try to get to a race or two each year if I can. It's been harder recently. And I also, I like high performance driving, and when I can spend time on the track, I like to do it. It's an adrenaline thrill for me.
Do you have a hot rod sitting out back or on the side of your house? What do you got sitting there?
I've got a sports car in the garage that I take to the track. Is my indulgence in my household. So it is a hobby that you can spend every dollar. It doesn't matter how much money you bring in the front door. You can spend every dollar you make on that. And so I try to moderate that, but I really enjoy it. It's actually it's a indulgence that takes a lot of precision, and that's part of why I like it. You can really, it's one of the, taking a car, driving it at its limits is not only an adrenaline rush, but if you practice it, you can steadily see the improvement. And I am somebody that thrives in an environment where I can iterate and improve, both in the business world and the personal world. And so I think that's part of why it appeals to me. The adrenaline rush is certainly part of it, but also consistently being able to get better and better with the more time I have to put into it.
It is interesting on hobbies, right? You literally can just keep spending whatever your hobby is. You name it, right? Doesn't matter. Hot rods, fishing,
right,
golf, camping, I don't know, whatever, you name it. You can just keep going. I recently ordered some more stuff for my Jeep Gladiator that some more build out things, they call it. My wife's like, what the hell? She's like, what are you doing? You kind of just have to force yourself to stop because you can't just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a client that will happily help you out. A High Country 4x4 is a good client of mine. They will sell you all the stuff you need for your Jeep, put it on for you if you need an introduction. But I definitely get it. I've also recently gotten into cycling. That was my pandemic hobby, and that's another hobby where you can you can spend $10,000 before you know what you've done, and
right.
But it's at least that one keeps me fit. I've also learned some of the best advice I ever got, in terms of being a dad, is to make your kids' hobbies your hobbies. That way, you actually have time to do them.
Right, you're right. They'll spend time with you. Yeah, very good. Then the boys are probably already into cars, I'm guessing, right? They're already into it. Yeah.
Yeah, the older one, a bit. The younger ones are still a little scared, but yeah, they all watch Formula One with me on the weekends and know all the racers' names and keep track of it's all over the world. So they like to learn about the places the races are and stuff like that. And it's fun.
Now, you know what this means, right? Before we get into business, last thing on personal, you know what this means when they get to be older and they want their first car, like, a little like 20-year-old Subaru for $2,000. That's not going to do it. They're going to be like, no, Dad, no.
Trust me, that is absolutely in the mind of me as well as of my oldest. My wife is actually getting we have a Tesla on order for her that's supposed to come sometime in January. And my son has already done the math that car will be exactly 5 years old when he's old enough to drive. And is already trying to, place his claws into that car.
That's pretty cool, man. That's pretty cool. Thanks for sharing that. So you were a startup entrepreneurial guy early on. You kind of had that bug. And were you, because you're tech, your ops, and your finance, right? You really specialize in all three. Which one were you first? Like, what was your bucket?
So I was a technologist first.
Okay.
I got pulled into the startup world. This was in the late 90s. I met some guys that were doing a startup called 𝐀𝐝𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐭𝐢𝐧𝐠. And it was a business that focused on managing the contingent workforces for really large businesses. So our clients were Bank of America, EDS, JCPenney, kind of Fortune 500 type businesses that had large retiree and other kind of contractor-based workforces. And they were effectively unmanaged at the time. What is now called the vendor management system, that's used in those type of businesses didn't exist. And while we didn't know what we were doing, that's what we ultimately ended up kind of creating. We didn't call it a vendor management system at the beginning, but that's sort of the cradle of what we ended up creating. And I was the technologist, leading that. Simply because at that point in time, anybody that could do anything in terms of programming on a computer was equivalent to magic. And so I had the opportunity and I saw it, and we built a successful business. We ended up selling that business about 5 years after starting it. Business is still around today. It's now called Workforce Logic. They've changed their name a few years ago, but it operated as 𝐸𝐴𝐽 up until maybe 2 years ago. And it was really neat to see that business grow, even when I wasn't involved in it anymore, to kind of know that I was there on day one, and helped kind of set the foundation of something that then took a life of its own was neat. And it definitely fostered that ongoing entrepreneurship.
A little cash payout for you there on the equity, but let me guess, not enough to retire. But how'd you do?
I did all right. I was 23 at that time. And so I thought I didn't have any kids yet. And so that, I think having kids starts to change your perspective of what it takes to have a good financial foundation. But yeah, it was a good way to start early in my career to have a win. And then there was also another business that was related to it that was in the same space I'm in now, the PEO or HR outsourcing space. And that business was called 𝐀𝐝𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐿. It was based at the time in Orlando. They've since moved the headquarters to Tampa, but the 𝐀𝐝𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐿 is also still around. And that was focused more on small businesses, which is where I've chosen to spend the rest of my career. So providing HR services for small and mid-sized businesses. And that really was a natural transition to me because of my entrepreneurial spirit and my passion for entrepreneurship. It's really what's kept me, in this business now for over 20 years.
The 𝐀𝐝𝐼𝐻, were you a co-founder there or?
No, there was a team the same team that started 𝐸𝐴𝐽 started that business, but I was there from, basically from the very beginning. I had spent most of my time on 𝐸𝐴𝐽 for a few years. And then as that business got up and running, I spent more and more time on the 𝐀𝐝𝐼𝐻 side of the business, and was able to grow that business, over a period of a decade or so that I was involved in it, and we grew from in this industry we measure our size, the number of employees we service on behalf of our clients. So I was there from the very beginning, kind of the first employee we paid all the way through. I think when I exited the business, we had 60 or 70,000 employees we were servicing.
Oh, incredible. Okay. And then they were purchased or they merged or whatever, and then you exited?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So that business, that business got sold as well. And I was fortunate enough to also have an ownership stake in that business, and ultimately, decided that I wanted to take some time to figure out what I wanted to do. So I'd had a couple of successful, ventures over 10 years. I was 30. We had at that time we had our first son, and so I was like, hey, I'm going to give myself a year to figure out what I want to do when I grow up. Turns out I'm not very good at sitting at home, not doing a whole lot. And so I think I told my wife I was going to take 3 months and not do anything. I think I made it maybe 3 weeks before I started doing consulting work. In the space, my phone was ringing, people were calling me, and so I started saying yes to some of that work, and I enjoyed it because it's the variety of the work that came in and the different things I got to see. But one of the calls I got was from a guy that I had met a number of years before, named 𝐀𝐝𝐼𝐮𝐬𝐭𝐢𝐧𝐠 that had bought a business in Hawaii and, wanted me to come help him grow that business. And ultimately, join him on the ownership and leadership team there. And so I had no intent of moving to Hawaii at all. So I took the consulting opportunity. I was like, yeah, sure, I'll go to Hawaii. I'll do some consulting. That'll be great.
Why not?
What I found though was that Hawaii was an amazing market for what we did, and it was an interesting adventure to be able to move there. And I still have a part. The business I'm a part of now is still a part of that ecosystem, but we've more than 5x that business in the last 10 years. And that business continues to grow in Hawaii. My business now here is in Obsidian is a part of that overall ecosystem, and sort of a sister company to the business that's based in Hawaii.
Well, what happened? Did ProService purchase Obsidian, and then the guys at ProService said, "Hey, will you move to Denver and run Obsidian?" Is that what happened?
No, so Obsidian was a new start. So I moved to Hawaii in 2010, 2011. We didn't stay there that long, honestly. We were there for about maybe 4 years, 4.5. I can't remember exactly how long we were there. And had our second child out there, but my wife and I didn't want to raise our kids in Hawaii. We didn't have any family support out there, and that was challenging. My wife's an only child and wanted to be closer to her family. And so about 3.5, 4 years into my time with ProService, I actually moved to Denver and then commuted to Hawaii for the next 5 years. So I commuted every 3 weeks from 2014 to 2019. And that was, the business was doing really well, and I really enjoyed what I was doing. And so that makes the commute part, doable, but it was also not something that I wanted to do forever, right? You miss a lot of things, especially as the kids got older. I didn't want to miss those, Tuesday night baseball games and things like that. Plus, honestly, commuting that far, that frequently is hard on the body. I've got the, while I got the frequent flyer miles, I've got the, I've got some of the
scars.
You
got the scars
from that travel as well. And so, and ProService received investment in 2017 from a private equity firm called FFL Partners. We'd been private equity backed before, so this was kind of a move up to a larger firm. And part of that thesis was always to expand out of Hawaii. And so that was really, while we talked about it as an idea, and when that transaction happened back in 2017, we really kind of got our stuff in gear and started to really look at what it would mean to expand out of Hawaii. With me in Denver, it was a natural place to look. Colorado is also a good market. I believe, and part of the thesis of what we're doing is that our product is one that's best delivered locally. So I focus here on Colorado-based businesses, just like ProService focuses on Hawaii-based businesses. My clients have employees all, we service every state, but I really believe I can do my best work if I can meet my clients face-to-face, understand their business. And the majority of my clients are based here in Colorado. And so, back in 2018, we really started working on it. 2019, we launched, and we sit here today with a business that I'm really really thrilled to be a part of, and a team that humbles me every day in terms of what they bring to bear in growing the business.
How many employees?
We have 35 internal employees here at Obsidian. Overall, ProService has about 350. But 35 here that service our Obsidian clients.
And ProService is owned by one PE firm, or there are several investors. I don't know how much you can share. I know it's a private company,
Yeah, so FFL is the majority investor, and the rest is management. Okay,
gotcha. And they own and ProService owns Obsidian, or it's a subsidiary or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. So I still, up until recently, I still served as the CFO of ProService as well. So you kind of asked about my technology, operations, finance. I none of that was by design. It's sort of it's sort of been where there's a need and where I have a skill that fits that need, I'm happy to do the work. And I'm somebody that enjoys variety and challenge in my work. And so, I've been able to, it's honestly one of the things that's kept me going and keeps me really engaged in my work is that I have a lot of flexibility in what I want to do and where I spend my time, as long as I'm being a good steward of the business and creating value. I have a lot of opportunity to set my own course and deliver on the goals that I set.
Very good. Give us the 3-minute elevator pitch on Obsidian really quick for the listeners. And by the way, for everybody, it is obsidianhr.com, obsidianhr.com. Jordan Conley also, of course, on LinkedIn. You can look him up there. But give us the pitch. Go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so Obsidian is a stone. It's a polished black stone that is formed by a volcanic eruption. And so when we were choosing the name, we wanted to pay some homage to our Hawaiian roots, and that's where the name came from. I get that question a lot. And so Obsidian is that black kind of compressed pumice stone that looks really shiny and beautiful. Sometimes you see it in people's jewelry and things like that. But we chose the name because we wanted to create our own brand and really be a Colorado-based business while still paying some homage to the fact that we are part of something bigger and have that kind of big brother, big sister type relationship with the business in Hawaii. But Obsidian is a HR services company for small and mid-sized businesses. So my typical client is anywhere from 10 to 300, 400 employees that is looking for a partner to help make them a better employer. And we do that through a turnkey and a fully bundled solution where our clients, we either become the HR department. Typically for our smaller clients, we act in effect as the HR department of the business. And that includes payroll, benefits, HR, both proactive and reactive, safety, the whole slew of things you would need from that, compliance. For our larger clients, typically we're supplementing some internal HR resources so those HR folks can focus on the things they want to do: recruiting, retention, culture building, goal management, and not having to get so caught up in all the transactional day-to-day details of HR, of which there are thousands. And so my clients count on me to give them peace of mind, to keep them compliant, to keep them on the right side of the law, to keep them aware of the regulations that are happening, and to help them practically implement it. Everything from helping clients understand the Equal Pay Act that's happened here in Colorado and implement it, as well as doing things like managing and delivering their payroll and all the transactional elements that come with that: 401k, retirement, benefits admin. So really the whole turnkey solution. And that's exactly what we do for small and mid-sized businesses.
And I'm guessing your pricing and packages all just depends on what you sign up for. I'm guessing you have a variety, or can you mold and shape offerings to benefit the client based on their needs? How does that work?
Yeah. So I see part of our role as a curator. So business owners and the people we're dealing with are often overwhelmed by too many decisions. And so one of the things I try to pride myself on is being a good curator of the things we bring to bear. And so, yes, we have some different packages or different options, and the pricing can depend on what a client needs, as well as the size of the client, of course. But I try not to give my clients, I try to understand their needs and bring them the right solution rather than saying, hey, here's 10 options and make a choice. I try to say, hey, here's maybe 2 options and here's the one I recommend based on what I know and based on the other, 500 clients I've seen like you over the last decade. And I think one of the things that I mentioned earlier, kind of my passion for small business and entrepreneurship, I've gone on a personal journey over the last several years of really trying to figure out, what legacy do I want to leave in my life? Like, what do I want to be able to say, when I'm retired and done, what did I leave on the world beyond the financial kind of, impact I'm able to make? And it really is fostering entrepreneurship and supporting small businesses. And so I believe this is the best platform for me to do that. And so I use my business experience and background to help our clients as well. and say, hey, here's what I'm seeing. Here's the decisions I'm making as somebody that's also making a decision for my business here. And this is the decision I'm going to make, and here's why. That may or may not be right for you as a client, but I'm not going to be afraid to share my view and opinion about some of the decisions that I'm making, and the reasoning behind those, is if it's going to help my clients or even anybody else that's a small business owner in the community.
Do you specialize in any particular thing, whether it's payroll or benefits or whatever? Or, I mean, do you like to just say, hey, we're a generalist and we do it all? Or is there something that's your favorite or that you specialize in?
Well, so the solution I offer really is a bundle. And the reason it's a bundle is I kind of payroll, benefits admin, the safety and the HR consulting are sort of the core of the bundle. There's other things I can add on. Or, to that, if they're needed, things like applicant tracking and drug testing and background checks and things like that. But at the core of the bundle, the reason that's the core is because it gives me all of the data to do all of those things well. So I'm in flow with all the transactions. So for example, when a client of mine hires an employee in a new state, I know about it because that employee provides that information during their onboarding process. I can automatically make sure that client's compliant in the new place that they have employees in. So new handbook addition, if that's necessary, register the client in the state if that's what's required, make sure they've got the work comp in place. And that's all something that happens without the client having to worry about it. And so, as opposed to if they're doing it on their own, they're going to have to go, not only have to know what they have to do, which most folks probably don't, because that's not what they're experts in, but they're going to have to go and actually do all those things on their own. And so the solution I provide is that bundle. So I can provide all of those things together by having the data and being in process and in flow with all those transactions to make sure that my clients get what they need.
How about the startup cash flow situation? If you're dealing with companies that have 10, 20 employees, the majority of the time cash flow is tight, or they're in the middle of a cash raise or whatever. How do you deal with those startup founders they're talking to you and they're like, okay, Jordan, this all sounds great, but I don't know if I can afford it?
Yeah. So honestly, the most of the expenses that a client pays me are things that they're going to pay no matter what, right? Every business that has employees is going to have workers' compensation. You're going to have payroll costs. You're going to pay your payroll taxes, or if you don't, you're going to quickly end up in jail. So you should pay your payroll taxes. So most of those things are the majority of what I end up charging my client. I'm able to do some of those things more efficiently and provide them better pricing on things like workers' compensation and healthcare benefits and some of those things. And so that helps that situation. At the end of the day, I do charge an administrative fee. But when you look at the overall cost that somebody's spending on the employee, my fee is a relatively small portion of that cost. And we deal with small businesses all the time. I am proud to say that over the last decade, between both ProService and my business here at Obsidian, we've retained 95% of our clients every year for the last decade.
Excellent.
And that 5% that we lose includes clients that go out of business or can no longer afford to pay me. Because we're dealing with small business and it happens. Now, obviously, I have to also protect my business from a cash flow perspective. I'm not a bank, and I don't extend credit to my clients in terms of their payroll or finance payroll. But a lot of my smaller clients will use services like factoring businesses or things like that to help manage their cash flow, to make sure that they can continue to meet their obligations to their employees.
Very good. So, we need to talk offline, by the way, when we finish up the podcast. I want to talk about Riderflex, our recruiting firm, and what we're doing for payroll and possible benefits coming up.
Great.
I know we chatted before, so I want to talk about that. By the way, do you have relationships with specific vendors on the benefits or payroll side or services, and is part of your business model having relationships with those so that there's like a referral and you can gain a little more money because you've partnered with certain people? How does your model work there?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest relationship I have there that my clients benefit from is I have relationships that we announced earlier this year with both Aetna as well as Kaiser Permanente. Okay. And so we have exclusive programs for our clients that can save significant dollars on the
Okay.
employee benefit side of things for many businesses. And that's a part of being a part of the Obsidian ecosystem in terms of getting access to those programs. And so that's a big benefit. And one of the key reasons that clients look to us is the cost of employee benefits, has outpaced the growth of wages and the growth of inflation, by a country mile for a long time. And unfortunately, It doesn't look like it's going to slow down anytime soon. So, any smart business owner needs to be doing everything they can to manage that cost. And that's what we do. So we have other relationships as well. But I would say in terms of the ones that our clients benefit from the most and the names that people would recognize, those are the ones that are sort of our premier partners.
The healthcare stuff for small business is always just a major issue, right? And I'm guessing at least most people I talk to that are in a startup situation, they have a couple of founders. The founders have partners or spouses that have jobs that have benefits, so that's how they're surviving. And so they're constantly trying to make sure that their partner has a different kind of job. Same situation for me. When I started Riderflex, my wife's employer has great benefits. And quite frankly, today she works there really only for that reason, because Riderflex, we haven't launched healthcare for our own team, primarily because there's this just thought, this ignorant thought. I use the word ignorance because I don't know all the costs, but I always think to myself, okay, we're a small business. We can't afford that. My wife's business her insurance is great, so she'll keep working there. And so of course, just like most founder spouses, she'll come home and say, when can I quit this job? I'm working here just for the benefits. Can't you get benefits at Riderflex? So it's a constant topic, I'm sure, which is wonderful for you to offer that service and be able to educate people like me and say, it'd be great for you to meet with me and go, okay, well, let's talk about it. What is the cost of her insurance? What could you provide? I'd love to look at that. I'm guessing
Absolutely.
if more people spent time talking to you about it, they'd probably make changes because they just don't know. They just assume that it's going to be terrible or super expensive.
Well, that's exactly right. And I have a lot of clients that are in exactly where you are at Riderflex. And I have clients that aren't ready to or can't afford to offer those benefits yet, but we're here when they're ready to, and we can keep talking to them about when that's the right time. Because there's financial considerations. There's also considerations in terms of your impact on recruiting and retention of your staff and things like that. There's also benefits you can offer as an employer that I help my clients with that don't require as much cost. So even things like on the very small business side, kind of businesses I would sort of say are still in the early stage startup, even being able to offer things like dental and vision or retirement programs, the things like that maybe don't require the same financial investment as the major medical can be attractive and can be more affordable.
Yeah, good point.
Increasingly, I'm also seeing alternative types of benefits in that stage. This is actually a benefit I offer to my employees internally, and I have a number of clients that have offered as well, which is student loan repayment. So I make a contribution to all of my employees' student loans. I contribute $50 a month. They have to make their payment. I pay another $50 to the principal on top of that each month.
Nice.
The first 2 years they're employed, and then that goes to $100 a month after 2 years. And what's been really neat through that process is I think we've been doing that for 4 or 5 years now, and seeing people pay their loans off. Right, the power of making additional principal payment on a loan is significant, right? And having employees post on our internal discussion board or externally on social media and saying, hey, I paid off my student loans with the help of my employer, and the firm we use actually sends a neat little kind of celebration at the end of the loans getting paid off, and it's really helped with our recruiting, and it really attracts the type of talent that some of the talent that I really need, which is those folks that are relatively early career, a few years of experience, a couple of years out of college. But many people in that spot find themselves, really struggling with the student debt load.
Mm-hmm. Do you provide interim, temporary consultants for projects like at Riderflex? We're a recruiting firm, so our business is placing candidates, but a lot of times our clients will call and say, hey, by the way, are any of your recruiters HR experts? Because we have this new program or this diversity training or a handbook that needs to be built or whatever. They'll call us and ask if one of our recruiters also has that expertise and want us to float somebody over. We try, like as a recruiting firm, we tried to kind of be a consulting firm too and offer that service, but that's just not really, that's just not really who we are. Right.
Yeah. And nor I, so I don't do, I don't have a professional services model where I kind of go by the hour, things like that. We'll do project work for clients, for folks after they sign up, but before they're kind of fully installed on our platform. Oftentimes, a lot of the prospects I end up signing up as clients come to me through those situations. They're like, oh, I need to update a handbook.
Right.
But what we find is that oftentimes that what they really need is a better HR ecosystem, and that they're treating a symptom and not necessarily the broader issue. One of the examples I like to give there, I'm going to leave the business name out since this will be public, but I have a longtime client that when they came on with me had no HR function at all. They were, it was two entrepreneurs that had started a business.
Yep, this happens all the time.
They never set out to be business owners. They'd been successful in their careers at large companies. Saw an opportunity to go create something that services those large businesses in their space, and created a business and have been very successful.
Next thing they know, they got 50 employees, and they're like,
that's exactly where they are today. They have 47 employees today. When they came on with us, I think they had 25. And they were an early client of us here at Obsidian, and so I got to know them pretty well. Yeah. And when they came on board, they had the employee handbook was what you download from Google when you employee handbook, right? It was, and that's what a lot of businesses do when you hire your first employee. Yes. I need a handbook. Let me go Google that. And that's a fine place to start. But as at a 25-person business, you've probably outgrown that. And I was at their office, and it was a Friday afternoon that I was there, and they happened to have a beer garden in the back of their office. They had a keg in the back. They offered me a beer, and we sat there and had a beer and talked about their business, and it was great. During that, I was looking at their handbook, and their handbook said there is no consumption of alcohol. And I said, "Hey, do you know that's in your handbook?" They're like, "Well, I heard that from Google." And I said, "So what's going to happen when you're, when you have a problem with an employee and you're on the stand and the lawyer says, can you read from your handbook what your policy is on alcohol?" You have to say, well, the policy says you don't consume alcohol on company grounds. Right. And then the next picture is the next exhibit will be the picture of the keg that's in the corner that we just took a beer from. And so let's have a conversation about that. Because, and I knew what they thought I was going to say was, well, you shouldn't have beer on property, which isn't what I said, because I don't think that's right. That's part of their culture, and you can totally do that as a business. Yeah. Yep. But you need to be smart about it. And so what I said to them was, hey, update your policy to say, hey, we have beer on site. You're welcome to that when you're off the clock or during a company event where we say it's okay. You can't operate any machinery. They have machinery, they have forklifts and some other things on site. Can't ever touch a piece of machinery after you've had anything to drink. If you have more than a couple of drinks, we'll pay for your Uber ride home. By the way, I told them they should have some sodas and juices and non-alcoholic beverages available as well. And we had a reasonable business conversation about how they could protect their business that way. And so I tell that story a lot because I think
it's a great example.
It's the view of the Department of No, or the department that's trying to stop things from happening in the business. I'm not
great
an
example.
HR person. Yeah. Not by kind of education. I've fallen into it and I know a lot about it, but I'm a business person, an entrepreneur, right? And so I want to help my clients with those sorts of things. And so when people call me with, hey, I need a new handbook, I want to dig in and ask a lot more questions and say, why? And have you thought about this? And have you had the business conversations about what you're actually trying to accomplish with your policies and with your handbook? Yeah. And if you thought about sitting on a stand and reading your handbook out loud, because I've had to do that. And if you haven't had to do it, close your eyes and think about it. And it'll make you be a lot more thoughtful about the policies you set and whether they actually reflect how you run your business.
I love that about you as an individual. Like if I was talking to you as the president of your company and you're talking to me about my business, you get it, right? You were a startup guy, you were an operations guy, you understand the stress, the cash flow, you lived it, which is great. You're not just an HR person. And by the way, I have a lot of HR friends. So everybody everybody listening to this show that's an longtime HR person, please don't take offense. But a lot of times when I'm speaking to a long time HR executive, you can just tell, like, okay, you've never started a business. You've never lived the startup life. You've never woke up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat, wondering if you have enough money. Like, you've never lived that. And so you're not really part of the club. The fact that you have both and you can offer HR services and you lived it as a startup, I think it's great, because you can speak the language and you know what they're going through. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, I do think that helps. I've also taken businesses through sales, and I've done M&A, and I've gone through the private equity life cycle.
Yes.
And so,
that's good.
I think that, and honestly, the majority of my clients are a bit bigger than the startup, where my typical client has 25 or 30 employees. I do have startup clients, and we happy to service those businesses. But it's also those other life cycles you go through as your business grows up. And a lot of it comes with business owners saying, gosh, you talked earlier about, hey, relying on your spouse for benefits. A lot of business owners also rely on their partner or spouse to help with payroll and HR. Oftentimes the businesses we're talking to, it's the Saturday that when HR gets done is on Saturday afternoon. Yeah. The kitchen table, and they're doing payroll or counting on their spouse that maybe or may not have a background in HR.
That's right.
And they realize, gosh, I need to professionalize this, or I'm going to harm the growth of my business, and I'm not going to protect myself as a business owner in the way that I should. Yep,
exactly. I want to ask you a few questions here about hot topics as we get towards the end of the call here. A couple of things, because I'm sure you deal with it just based on your business. First, how are you advising your clients right now with regards to COVID, masks, vaccinations? I'm sure you have founders calling you saying, Jordan, what the hell am I supposed to do? What do I need to do here? And then, of course, the recent news where, OSHA supposedly is going to clamp down on January 4th. And now I'm sure you have clients in different states. And some of those governors are pushing back, and then I'm thinking about your service. I'm like, oh man, this could get messy. How are you handling that? What are you telling your clients? Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So lots of conversations around there, and I think the short answer is there's no one answer that's right, and there's a lot of conversation that goes into it in terms of what's right for the clients. I do think the OSHA mandate, while it's being challenged in the courts, I think I don't have a crystal ball, but I think it does prevail through the courts and does become something that comes into force. If I'm reading the tea leaves. Okay. So I think businesses should be preparing for that if you're over 100 employees or receive Medicare or Medicaid funding. I also think there's going to be a lot of trickle down from that. I think a lot of firms that are covered by the mandate are going to turn around to their vendors, who are oftentimes smaller businesses, and say, hey, we've done this for our employees, we're going to impose it on our vendors as well. We've already seen some of that.
That's a great point. I haven't even really thought about that lately. I mean, the vendor, your vendor has to come to the building. They spend time in the building to do whatever. So you're going to, good point. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
No, that's exactly right. And so look, what I'm advising my clients to is I think the decision on, whether you're covered by the federal mandate or not, to make a decision on mandate or not mandate is a decision that every business owner needs to think about in terms of what decision they're making at their business. You absolutely can mandate as a business owner if you want to. You have to have an exception process and cover the ADA, Americans with Disabilities Act issues there. But you can make that mandate if you choose. But that's not a right for every business, and a lot of businesses are struggling with the implications of retaining employees, particularly in this challenging labor market, if they draw that line in the sand. And that's a it's a real concern.
That is a real concern.
While I've encouraged it and I've even rewarded my employees that have gotten vaccinated, I personally have stopped short of mandating it because at this point, because of some of the challenges I think I would have with retention.
I think the retention thing is a big deal. My wife works for a retailer, and that retailer is already short staffed. I mean, she came home the other day. She's like, we're 25 people short right now. And she says, if they try to roll this out, we're going to be a lot more short staffed. So yeah, I think that's a real concern. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. You know, they're going to be short staffed.
I don't either. I would say my advice to my clients is, is encourage it and even reward it, reward getting vaccinated, have a system in place, whether you're over 100 or not and covered by that mandate for employees that aren't vaccinated, if they have to come in the office or come to, visit to be tested on a regular basis. I recommend in line with the CDC guidelines that employees that aren't vaccinated wear masks in the office. I think that following those guidelines is the right. Sorry about that.
That's right. No worries.
Following those guidelines is the right path. But it will be. But there's lots of challenges, and what I've found, and I've done a lot of webinars on this topic. I'm actually doing another one, next week. Cool. There are 1,000 individual situations that people need to be addressed here, and I would say it's where having a partner like us that you can call up and say, hey, I need help on this specific situation, because chances are we've seen some flavor of that in one of our other clients. Hey, here's what we saw, here's what happened, and here's what you can expect. Should you make that decision?
I would give 2 pieces of advice to the listeners right now, and I'm not an expert on the topic, but I would do 2 things right now. If I'm a business owner, I would try to probe a little bit with my employees early on so that I know who I might end up losing. Kind of try to get your head around, okay, if they do this, I might lose Sally, I might lose Johnny. Okay, I've heard Bob say something. So if I lose those guys, so prepare for a possible departure by maybe having some early conversations and getting a feel for the pulse of your employees. That's what I would do that first, so that you can kind of get an idea. And I think, some of the people saying I'm going to quit if they do that, that won't be 100%. When it comes down to it, a lot of people actually won't quit, but they might lose some. So I would probe. Then if I was a candidate, my advice to the candidate would be a couple of things. Number one, if you're going to quit over that, make sure that you are leaving on the best possible terms, not pissing anybody off. Don't walk out of the building flipping people off, because you may need to come back over that bridge. Especially if OSHA says, okay, it's been 6 months. Now every company has to do it. I don't care how many employees you have. So now the employees, you don't have a choice anyway. So don't burn the bridge is my point for candidates. I would encourage them to just be as nice as possible. And because you may have to make that phone call, come back around.
That's right. I think the other thing, a lot of questions we're getting is, well, how can I ask? How can I, how do I even find out what the state of my workforce is? And my recommendation there for folks is to do a survey.
There you go.
Don't go and walk around the office and be like, hey, Steve, are you vaccinated? Or send out a survey that people can fill out. Ask them just the simple yes or no question. Have you been vaccinated? Yes or no. If the answer is no, ask them, are you planning on it?
That'll give you a good read. Yeah, that'll give you a read.
That way you can get a sense of where you're at, and then from there deal with, determine how much of a gap do you have, and where might your challenges be. But I think the first step is to gather that data, and you can absolutely do it, right? You can absolutely ask that question. Sometimes folks are reluctant to do it, but it's about doing it in a way that protects people's privacy, and doesn't put you as an employer in a situation to use any of that information in your job.
That's good. Process. Great advice. And I also think what you're doing as the CEO for your own company is a good idea, which is you saying, here's the knowledge, here's the information, here's what we recommend, here's what we encourage, but I'm stopping short of forcing. I think that right now at this moment today, and by the way, we're recording this on November 10th, 2021. If you're a CEO, I would recommend doing what Jordan's doing. I would stop short of making a mandate at your company right now and just let what's going to happen with the government and OSHA play out, because then as the CEO, you're not the bad guy, right? You're just like, hey, I got,
Well,
this is
and
the
there's going
orders.
to be a lot more parity in the workforce, in the marketplace at that point in time, right?
Yeah, right.
To your point of like, and to be clear, I do, well, maybe not in January, I do expect it to come down, kind of down market in terms of employer size in the future, for sure.
Probably. One more question, one more topic before we hang up. Remote work. Where do you think long-term, when I say long-term, over the next 10 years or so, where's it heading? Do you see it expanding and eventually everybody that works from a laptop or just on the phone doesn't come to a building, or do you feel it pulling back into the office? Where do you think it's heading, and what do you recommend?
It's a great question. I think I have an interesting perspective on this, because for a long time, I mentioned earlier, I commuted to Hawaii. I did it every 3 weeks, but for the 2 weeks where I wasn't commuting, I was for most of that time the only remote employee for the business based in Hawaii. So at the time, I think we had 250, 270 internal employees, and I was the only person not in Hawaii. And so I had to learn a lot personally about how to make that work and teach people how to work remotely and overcome what I call the friction of remote work, right? The fact that you have to pick up the phone or start a Slack conversation instead of, going and standing by somebody's desk and catch them on their way back from the break room. Those things are all friction that kind of decrease communication and make things harder. That existed before COVID. And then what people experienced as remote work, for the most part, was everybody being remote, everybody being on the same page in terms of being at home and being remote. And as somebody with the experience of kind of being in, what I would call that hybrid world for a long time, everybody going remote was actually easier. Everybody being on Zoom, nobody being in a conference room, like everybody had to find a way to make it work. But I actually think we're going to be stuck forever in this hybrid world, which is kind of the worst of both, in my honest opinion.
That's good. Good point.
But it takes the most amount of work. It can work, but it takes work to make it work. And so I think a couple of things that I think about here is I think that in order to access the best talent, bottom line, you're going to have to support remote, some level of remote work for most businesses. I think that's
Agreed.
The bottom line, and you will sacrifice access to
Yes.
some significant portion of the talent pool if you're not. And it's, by the way, not just people that live remote. I've hired people that live in Arvada that want to be remote because they don't want to sit in traffic for 45 minutes a day, and frankly, I don't blame them. But as a the challenge is engaging the workforce in that hybrid way. And I have not cracked the code yet. And I don't know that anybody has, but like when I think about my all hands meeting, for example, my last all hands meeting I did, with our 35 employees here,
right,
probably had half of them in the office and half of them on Zoom. And that's a real challenge, right?
It is.
Rapport both with the people in the room and the people on Zoom feels almost impossible. To do two separate meetings makes them feel like they're separate class, they're not all equal, and that doesn't feel right either. So for me, this is a journey I'm still trying to figure out.
Okay.
I do think businesses have to be conscious also of the tools they invest in. So being really clear about, hey, here's how we communicate. We use Zoom for this. We use Slack for this. We get on the phone for these sorts of things. We require video for, for internal meetings. I think those things, while small, are actually,
they matter. Yep.
And I think that actually being less, I think what we will see is less and less kind of, I think when everybody went remote last year, it was kind of just, hey, let's make it work. I think what you're going to see is less and less flexibility on hey, everybody can kind of do it any way they want remotely, and a little more structure in the way that that's going to support that longer term engagement and more consistency with how people can engage. So long answer to your question, but it is top of mind for me, and it's a conversation I'm dealing with internally. It's a conversation I'm talking with a lot of my clients about, and I think personally, my preference when I recruit is people that are within commute distance, kind of they're here in Colorado, or maybe they're down in the Springs or Fort Collins.
Okay.
And they could be in the office, they could come in one day a week, or they could come in for a company meeting. But I'm not going to, but I've got talent that isn't here or has moved away from Colorado that is really important for me to retain. And so also having even within a hybrid workforce, some folks that might come in occasionally, and some folks that you might not ever see in person.
Great perspective. You're right. The hybrid is difficult, and people probably need to continue to work through that and put structure around it. Great advice. By the way, I'm seeing more Sprinter vans on the highway than I've ever seen before. And I think it's all software engineers working from vans driving around the country. I don't know.
I think you might be right. And it's funny. I have a relationship with an actuary that I've worked with for years that does some work on our insurance program. And he spent the last 2 years in working out of an RV and spending time in the national parks. I think he told me he's visited 20 some national parks, in the last couple of years, and is going to go check a bunch off his list, in next summer as well.
That's cool.
He can, all he needs is a laptop and internet connection.
Yep. As long as they can jump on the team meetings, I do think you're right. I'm big on that too. I want people to be on camera. I want the faces, that interaction. I'm huge. I don't mind them being remote, but I want to see them. I think that's important. Last question. If you had to put Jordan Conley's core purpose in life into a sentence right now, what would that sound like?
The flip answer that came to mind was get my kids out the door to school with lunch and all their homework is what it feels like until about 8 o'clock every morning. But I've mentioned I've gone on this journey, and for me, it is really about fostering entrepreneurship, both in my team internally. I believe, one of my most proud moments is when one of my longtime employees went and bought her own business. And became an entrepreneur herself. And so fostering that internally as well as with my clients and being involved in causes that support that is key. And developing people. I have been fortunate to have success in my career and have some of the day-to-day pressure of kind of having to make make a new dollar every day. That's important, but I instead taking that energy and investing it in developing people. And I'll briefly brag on one of my employees who she worked for me in Hawaii. She now works for me here in Denver. She started in the mailroom. She now runs my implementation department. And has done that through hard work and dedication to her job. And to me is evidence and proof that the American dream is alive and well, right? And
cool.
That gives me an enormous amount of satisfaction.
Very cool. Jordan, thank you so much for sharing your story on the Riderflex podcast. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Steve.